Hello my lovelies, what's up, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to today's video, which is going to be ranking my top 10 favorite spring eyeshadow palettes. You guys know I am here for the bolds, for the brights, for the super colorful eyeshadows, and this is my time to shine. I love me a good spring eyeshadow palette, and we've got quite a few to go over, 10 to be exact, of course. So if you're interested in seeing what my favorite spring eyeshadow palettes are and how I would rank them, then just keep on watching. So we're gonna go in the order of least favorite to most favorite. Granted, these being in the top 10, I love them all, but there are reasons that I have ranked some higher than others. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. This palette, I don't know if it's available anymore, and I'm just gonna disclose there's a couple in here I don't think are available anymore, so please forgive me on that, but given that it's my favorite 10, a couple of them are going to be no longer available. So this is the Natasha Denona Tropic palette. This was on sale for the longest time, and I never understood why it didn't get the recognition that it deserved. Now granted, the cover isn't the greatest. It looks kind of retro if you ask me with the blue, but the inside of this palette is everything you would want in a spring eyeshadow palette. It's super bright, it's got the pastels, it's got the colorful, and it's got the pops of color, which is awesome. This has always been my favorite shade here. Everything you need to create either a neutral or a just bold spring eyeshadow look is in this palette. And this has been one of my favorite Natasha Denona palettes since I picked it up a long time ago. So again, I never understood why it didn't get the recognition that it deserved, but anyways, it definitely is still one of my favorites to this day. And I'm hoping this inspires you to pull this bad boy back out if you do own it. Again, great way to create some neutral looks if the bold and colorful is not for you, but also the bold and colorful is there in case you want to use that, or just mix and match, and you've pretty much got a one-stop shop in here. So this is my number 10. Moving into the Sugar Crystals palette by Violet Voss. You guys know I am a super huge fan of this brand. This is a super well-priced brand for the quality of product that you get, and I remember when this first came out, I wasn't gonna get it, ended up getting it and absolutely loved it. So her packaging is never super amazing. Her font is usually a little, you know, I could pull that off of Word, but that's okay. This is what counts, and this is everything you would want in a spring palette and more. It is pastel, but again, pops of color. It's got the corresponding matte, and then it's got like a metallic, and then it's got a, I don't know, shimmer. I'm horrible at describing my finishes, but it's basically got 3 of each finish in each shade. But once you mix and match, they are so pretty and just so colorful, very springtime, very like you just went out into the garden with a bunch of flowers. It's pigmented. There's something about Violet Voss metallics that really draw me in. Her mattes never swatch the greatest, but they perform really nicely. Now, her metallics though are on another level. And like I said, for the price point, it's really hard to believe that it could be that price point for what you get. But again, her swatches are never the greatest, but this is a beautiful springtime palette, and I'm bringing this bad boy back out for the season. It's been a while since I've used it, and I love it. And remember, it went on sale as well, so I'm thinking these colorful palettes don't have as much of a following as a lot of the neutral palettes, but that's okay. This is my number 9. So following in that same theme, the Colourpop Fade into Hue is my 8. So this is an amazing palette, obviously for the price point, kind of like along the lines of Violet Voss, but even more so. And this is one of their mega palettes. This has every color you could possibly need for springtime to bring in the fresh floral colors, whatever it is you're wanting. Now, this is not the kind of palette that you've got like the bold and the neutral kind of mixed in and you can pick what you want. This is more just on the colorful bold side. You are looking for a pack-a-punch spring look, but it has got a ton of different, it's got a lot of shades, but it's got a ton of different finishes for each shade. Again, just like the Violet Voss. This does have a couple of pressed glitters though, which a lot of people are turned off by, but I love me a good pressed glitter, and I'm here for it. So anyways, Colourpop really can't be beat when it comes to both price and quality. So this really is, and this one is still, I think it comes in and out of stock, but it's still available on their website. And if you're looking for a good spring option, then this is definitely a go-to. So, and if you're looking for something budget friendly, but do you see how beautiful that looks? Very bright, very bold, very florally. And that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of spring, is just the flowers and just all of the sunshine. So that being said, this is everything in a spring palette, and it is my number 8. So moving in to number 7, this might surprise some of you, but it is the Huda Pastels Mint. Now granted, this is the one I liked best out of the 3. The rose never worked for me, it was too light. The lilac one is pretty, but I could take it or leave it. This one though is beautiful. And a lot of people have kind of a love-hate relationship with the Obsessions palettes by Huda Beauty. I very much like them, but I find, just like I told y'all months ago in my minis video, that I don't tend to reach for them. But this is a lovely palette. And if you are a fan of mint eyeshadows or just mint color in general, then this is perfect. It reminds me of spearmint gum. But it's the perfect spring palette just because it's softer. It is obviously a pastel themed palette, but it's also got these finishes that are, and these are thinner finishes, but I find that these go on so nicely on the eye, and they don't swatch that great, but they're very metallic and very pretty. So this is just, it's perfect for spring. And if you're just kind of looking for something small and on the go, then this is perfect. Now, again, these don't swatch all of that great, and it's because they're so thin. They do take a couple of times to build up, but they are so metallic. They look wet on the eye. They're very shiny, and they're worth the work, quite frankly. So if you're looking for a cheaper option, or I shouldn't say cheaper, but a less expensive option when it comes to a mint palette, you guys know, or you probably know, that Colourpop has a mint palette also, a monochromatic mint palette, but this one out of the 2 is my fave. So definitely love this bad boy for spring. Super fresh, super lightweight, just very bright, and not bright in the sense of like bold color, but just bright and airy. So love this one right here. Okay, let's move into, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 6. So this was actually a holiday palette, and it's the Pat McGrath Blitz Astral Quad in Ritualistic Rose. So it was a holiday palette, but this one is so springtime because of the rosy shades that it just, I find that I don't use it a whole lot, like in the winter time and holiday time. Not that it has to be because it was a winter release or a holiday release, but it just is, for me, it screams spring. Because of the pink, it reminds me of like petal pink, and even the name Ritualistic Rose is just perfect for springtime. Now granted, this is just a quad, so you don't have as many options, but there's a beauty about this palette that I love so much. And this shade is my favorite. But then it's got this brown that just, the combination is super spring-like without being overly colorful and dramatic. Like, it's a very elegant springtime type of palette, and it kind of takes the decision out of it because you've just got the 4 shades. I love this one for spring, and I am going to be doing a few looks with it this season. So that is my number 6. Not a whole lot to talk about with it just because it is so small, but it's the perfect little spring palette. And again, those little quads have been kind of coming in and out of stock ever since that holiday release, so you may still end up finding it. I don't know. Let's move into number 5. This is a newer palette for me, but I have absolutely loved this. This is the Morphe 35S Sweet Oasis palette. This one is so good, and I especially love it for all of the turquoise shades on this side of the palette. This one is so pigmented, and I know Morphe can be kind of hit or miss. Sometimes their formula is super dry, super chalky, but every now and then you stumble across a palette that is really, really great and you end up loving to use, and this is one of those palettes. So there is plenty to choose from, and this is one of those that you can go neutral, you can go more springtime, and you can even take this into summer because of all the pool shades in here. But this one's just, like the mattes are creamy, which I'm not used to in a Morphe palette. The metallics are very metallic in this palette. And like I said, there's a lot of variety because if you wanted to take it neutral, you could. If you wanted to take it girly and springy, you could. And if you wanted to add the bold pop of color in the blue or the turquoise, you could do that too. If you wanted to take it smoky, you could do that with the shades down there. So there is plenty to work with in this palette, and it's been a very fun palette. And this is just, it's very, very springtime. There's certain palettes that just kind of scream spring. And this one was one that I had absolutely no doubt in my mind that it was a favorite for this season. So this is a good option. And of course, Morphe is relatively cost effective. So let's move into number 4, which ironically is another Morphe palette, and it is the Maddie Ziegler Imagination palette. And I think this one is still available at Ulta. This is probably my favorite Morphe palette of life. It is so pretty. It's so easy to work with, but there is such a lovely effect when you put this on the eyes. And it doesn't look like it's going to be a whole lot. It looks pretty basic, if you want my honest opinion. You look at it and you're like, okay, but then you start using it and you're like, wow, this is so nice. And this, again, a lot of these you'll find have the same common theme of you can go neutral, or you can go with those pops of spring shades if you so choose. You can even obviously take this one smoky, just like the last one. There's a lot of variety in this palette, but the performance in this palette is the best I have ever tried from Morphe, and I love, love, love this palette. So let me give you a few spring shades. So pretty. Now these are the mattes, and again, kind of like the Sweet Oasis palette, they're very soft, which again, I'm not used to. Ooh, it's a little crumbly. It's a little soft for Morphe, which I'm not used to, but I like that they're softer. They're not dry sandpaper type. They are just very, very creamy. They're buildable, they're easy to work with, and if you just wanted to use 1 or 2 shades, you could. If you wanted to make a whole look out of it, you could. My favorite shade is this one right here, which is called God Mom, and it's very, very sparkly. My kind of shade. So again, you can kind of mix and match your springtime pops of color along with your neutrals, and I do, like I said, I do think this one is still available at Ulta. At least the last time I was there, I did see it. So let's move into number 3, which is a super new eyeshadow palette, but it's one that I'm really going to be using frequently over the course of this season. I loved it more than I could even tell you. I really did not have high hopes for this one. It's the Viseart Paris Love Letter eyeshadow palette. Everything from the package or the packaging to the inside of the palette is just everything spring. It's so pretty. And again, you can go, mainly you go neutral with this one, but it's got that one pop, which I had very low hopes for because everyone was saying it wasn't pigmented. On me, it was so bright, so pretty. And then this, I've told y'all before, if you've watched my last few videos, that this purple right here, this lilac, is like a gray lilac, and it's got a very different type of tone than anything else in my collection. So those two for me made this whole palette. They are everything spring and more. And then again, you can do the whole, Viseart does a ton of neutral type of shades, and so I found the quality of this palette to be super on par with what I was hoping, and these are just, I think the quality is amazing. So I don't know, I guess people got some duds or something, but I have very much enjoyed this palette. See, that didn't swatch so good, but and I am so excited to be using this for the spring season. So let's see if I can get you a good swatch here, because once we get up into my arm, I don't do so good. There we go. So it doesn't swatch very, I've told y'all several times, it doesn't swatch great. You would probably think it would be a dud if you looked at just based on the swatches, but the swatches tell nothing because this palette is amazing. Okay, friends, so my number 2 palette is the e.l.f. Retro Paradise palette, and I'm sorry that I don't think this one is still available anymore. If you really wanted it, I'm sure you could hunt it down. But it's crazy to me that an e.l.f. palette is a number 2 for me in a top 10, just because e.l.f. to me is so hit or miss. I don't have much by the brand. Sometimes I've tried things that I'm just like, absolutely not. And then there's a couple where I'm like, this is the best drugstore palette of life. And this is that. It's so pigmented. It's so good. It's metallic. It's some of what I am wearing on my eyes today, with the other being my number 1 palette, but it's everything in a spring and summer eyeshadow palette, and I really was not expecting to love this as much as I did. I kind of bought it on a, I'm probably not gonna like this kind of thing, and I ended up loving it. So this has everything, again, that you would need for a neutral palette, but also a, I'd say a bold eyeshadow, but it's also got like these bronzy shades that, like I said, will take you into summer. But these are very, they're different from any other e.l.f. shadows I had used, especially the metallics, because they're very pigmented and they're very soft. I remember using the was it J Kissa palette, the one that came before this one, and I was not impressed. Like, I found that one very difficult to work with. So I kind of had the same expectation for this palette, and it was not the case. So here are a few swatches of this one. So pretty. And I want to say this one was like $15 or something. Let me give you a swatch of the green. So this is like, these types of shades for me are spring. And I don't have a whole lot of these kind of lime green shades in my collection. So anytime I come across one, it's always a fun addition to the collection to be able to have that. But things like this blue and this green, just perfect for spring. And then you take it into summer with this bronze and this orange. I'm excited for summer palettes too, y'all. I'm ready to rank those as well. But definitely a number 2. I love this palette so much. And the purple is actually what I have on my eyes today. Okay, let's go into the final, the number 1 palette for spring for me. My very favorite in this 10 palette ranking. And it is the ABH Norvina Volume 3. First off, the packaging is everything spring. I mean, you don't even need to look inside the palette to know this is a springtime palette because of all the butterflies, the orange. This was my favorite out of the 3 that they released. This had the shades, the number of shades that appealed to me the most. So packaging, everything. Then you open it and you've got almost like an overwhelming amount of springtime shades that you're like, I don't even know what to choose. Because there's sometimes I do look at this and I'm like, feeling a little overwhelmed. I don't know what to go in with first, but this is the other palette that I am wearing on my eyes. It's everything matte on my eye came from this, and then the metallic came from the e.l.f. Retro Paradise. So very, very easy to work with. Very pigmented, very pretty. And I think these are pigments, yeah, Pro Pigment palette. So there's definitely a ton to choose from if you're looking for something in the way of a springtime palette. It's kind of one of those things where you may as well get everything in a one-stop shop and not have to worry about several different palettes, but there is plenty to choose from in here. Don't mind this, that's from the last palette, but let me give you one more. Let me give you a green. But this also has, I feel like it has more in the way of brights, but it also has its fair share of semi-neutral shades to where if you wanted to tone it down a little bit, you could. But I feel like these palettes were so underrated because when they first came out, they came out like back to back to back. So they didn't get the appreciation that I really feel like they deserve, especially this one. It's very, very pretty. And again, maybe there's just not as much of a following for the brighter type of eyeshadow palettes. I don't know. But for me, this one is my favorite because pretty much if I need a bright shade, the likelihood of it being in here is pretty high just because it has so many. So for the price point, I can't remember how much these were. I think they may have been like $49 around there. For the number of shades you get and the variety that you get, I feel like this is well worth it and definitely my number 1. I want to say that with these 3 palettes, a lot of people's complaint was that there were just too many similarities within the same palette. But I have found it to work really, really nicely. And again, it is my absolute favorite springtime eyeshadow palette. Okay, guys, so that brings us to the end of this video, of this ranking video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found some sort of inspiration. Maybe you own any of these palettes and you need to go pluck them out of your eyeshadow collection in order to use them for spring. All right, guys, before I let you go, I just need to give you a very quick verse of the day. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks so much for spending time with me today. I really enjoyed chatting some makeup with you as always, especially eyeshadow palettes. I'd like to know what your favorite springtime eyeshadow palettes are. So let me know in the comment section below because that is actually how I find out about a lot of products that I didn't otherwise either give a second look to, didn't know about. And so I'm curious to know what your go-tos are for the spring, you know, just in case I need to pick one up. All right, friends, today's verse comes from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and it says, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Alrighty, guys, well, I hope that gives you some encouragement, inspiration. It is my prayer to you that if you don't already know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, that he would make himself so real to you in a way that you would know that it is him, that he would show you a peace and a love that you have never experienced before. He's the best decision you'll ever make. And in this world of absolute craziness, it is an amazing thing to have something constant to hold on to. So that is my prayer for you. All right, friends, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Until the next one, please stay safe and stay well. See you soon. Bye.